Hey folks, Josh here for another exciting episode of the vlog. This week we're diving into the topic of court. The good, the bad, the ugly of me practicing court in Canada, what it's like, going into some details, sharing some stories, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you're interested in that, then you'll definitely enjoy the episode. Thanks as always for tuning in, and let's jump in. Hey folks, Josh here. It is oh my God, it's November the 2nd already? Holy crap, November 2nd, 2025, second last month of 2025 for another episode of the vlog. Thanks very much for tuning in. For those who it's the first time, I'm a Canadian family lawyer. I'm also a tech co-founder, so I like to check in every week, tell you about my week as a lawyer, week as a tech co-founder, building my startup, and all the fun stuff that comes with it. Today, what I wanted to focus on is court. And part of this is a lot of you on my Substack, when I've posted about court, have expressed interest in wanting to hear more. A lot of my followers on YouTube and LinkedIn and Substack, definitely be on the Substack if you're not, link will be in the description. But a lot of you are lawyers, a lot of you are not. You might be other legal professionals, or you might be smart and not be practicing law at all, but just be interested in what it's like, right? I know I always have been as well. So I wanted to share a little bit on the good, the bad, and the ugly of court, because as many of you know, pardon me, a little while ago I pivoted my practice into doing more family litigation law. And so I've been spending a lot more time in court, especially in the last 3 months. And I have a busy month ahead. November, I actually have a fair amount of court appearances. So I wanted to share a little bit on what I will call my good, bad, and ugly of court. Now, a couple caveats first, right? Obviously, this is one man's opinion. And so take it with a grain of salt, especially because maybe the courts that I'm appearing in are very different from yours. Maybe you live in another province. Maybe you do a different type of law in front of different types of judges. Maybe you live in a different country. And so just keep that in mind. This is just one man's experience in family court in Ontario, mostly either the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, or Ottawa, just to give you some context, because that's kind of where, the majority of my files are. So anyways, I'm going to jump in. Let's start with the good. I love court, right? So part of the reason why I did a bit of a reevaluation and got back into litigation is I did some time exploring and talking through why I even initially wanted to become a lawyer, because I always did, right? I could never relate to the people who were like, I never knew what to do, and I switched my undergrad 3 times, and then I pivoted careers a few times. That's totally fine. That's normal. That seems to be the majority. But for some reason, for as long as I could remember, forever, like quite literally since I could have a memory, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. And I think the big appeal to me was the oral advocacy piece. I don't love sitting by myself at the desk drafting. What I do like is negotiating with the other party, with the other lawyer, and then obviously appearing in court and trying to put the best argument forward in front of a judge and getting a good outcome for my client. So the good is, I've really enjoyed the experience so far. Having to prepare, having to show up, having to know your stuff I find a little bit exhilarating, super mentally stimulating. I find the judges to be some of the smartest people that you ever meet, right? Obviously, not every judge is perfect or amazing or brilliant, but I've actually found that most of the judges are pretty great, and they're very, very smart. And I would say the key word might be they're very sharp. And so you really have to be on your game. I talk about this a little bit in some of my content about how probably the best way to prepare for court is to just know your facts inside and out. Read the materials multiple times. You don't even necessarily have to be the most persuasive talker in the world, but when the judge hits back with questions or this, that, and the other, it's just being super prepared, knowing the facts and being able to answer their questions confidently. And I find that's almost half the battle. So I find it to be a great arena to try to perform in. I find the judges to be really smart. I find that in most cases, and I'll talk about this a little bit in the other categories, but sometimes the decisions can be unpredictable, but that's almost a good thing. Because number one, it really keeps you on your toes. And number two, it helps keep clients out of court, right? Because if you always knew what the decision was going to be, then people would make smarter decisions about whether they should go to court or not. But that's not the case. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I find it mentally stimulating. I find that in a lot of cases, I haven't had the rug pulled over my eyes yet in terms of like a really bad or crazy decision. And especially in family law, what I found is the judges are super pro amicable reconciliation, meaning if and when they can, they'll go over and above to try and get the parties to agree on at least some stuff or move the file forward. So for whatever it's worth or whatever you hear or all the nightmare stories, I have enjoyed when being in court, whether it be in person or virtual, because a lot of the appearances now are virtual, which has some good parts too. It's a little bit more convenient. Your clients don't have to travel. The court maybe doesn't need as many resources. They can probably hear more matters in a day. And so that's, I think good as well. For some appearances, they still require most of the important appearances to be in person. And I do think that's important because you want to uphold the, I don't know what the right word here is, but you want to uphold the special event of being in court, standing in front of a judge type element to it. So that's the good. And this is like a high level overview, right? I'm not going to go into every detail, especially because these vlogs are not terribly long. The bad. So what's the bad? Number one, and this is probably for most courts, is it's just a little bit slow in terms of even just booking appearances, right? Like if you want to go to court, just understand, if you want to go to family court in Ontario, once you make that decision and prepare and serve and file your documents, you're probably looking at 1 to 2 months until the first appearance. And then if you go to the first appearance to book the case conference, that's maybe 1, 2, 3 months from then. Most clients don't realize that at the case conference, the judge actually isn't deciding on the high-level legal issues. So then you're probably booking maybe a settlement conference, which again will be 2, 3, 4, 5 months away. And then if it doesn't settle, you'll be scheduling a trial management conference, which might be 2, 3, 4, 5 months away. And then if it doesn't settle, you'll have trial in 1, 2, 3, 4 months from then, right? So do the math, right? You decide you want to go to court on day one. If the matter runs the gambit and doesn't settle, you're probably not getting to a trial for at least a year, if not more. Now, in the interim, you can bring motions where the judge can decide on certain issues while you're waiting for trial, but those can be expensive and those aren't guaranteed, right? You might lose a motion. And so it's slow, right? Now, is that the court's fault? Not necessarily. A lot of the courts and court systems are understaffed. They don't have enough resources and stuff like that. So I'm not putting a particular blame on anyone. I'm just saying the court system in general is slow and it's not ideal in that regard. So keep that in mind. Secondly, is it always kind of like fair? Are the processes perfect? No, right? Like I said, as part of the good, like I find once you get in front of that judge, it's enjoyable, it's fun, it's pretty good. But dealing with all the admin in the interim is a little bit difficult. The other problem being that every court and sometimes every region have different ways of doing things. So for example, how do you file documents? What documents should you file? What should the formatting of the documents be? How do you include attachments? How do you upload them into the portal? What's the naming convention? Blah, 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 right? Problem is, every court may have different instructions for doing different things. So you have to check the court-specific instructions. You have to check the region-specific instructions. You might have to check the provincial-wide instructions. And it can be very difficult just from an admin standpoint, keeping track of all of that. And yeah, so a little bit inefficient, I would say, but it's also partly the name of the game in this type of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like a quick summary. I would also say part of that problem is that parties can take advantage of that. So because it can be easy to delay things or reschedule things or adjourn things, parties who it may not be good to move the file along quickly can easily cause delays and make things even slower. But again, that's just a system that we're playing in. And then lastly, the ugly. I wouldn't say there's anything ugly per se about litigation and court. What I would say is probably the ugliest is when you have parties who are being super unreasonable. That's when, as a lawyer, it can get ugly, right? It's typically the court doesn't really cause anything to be ugly. I think they're doing the best with what they can. The problem is when you have like a borderline crazy or unreasonable party or parties, and the arguing is just so bad, it can make your life very difficult as a lawyer. And that's probably a conversation for another time, because it can be a topic in and of itself. But those can be some of the most difficult files, not because of the court. It can end up being a huge headache in court, but again, not caused by the court, typically caused by either one of the parties or both of the parties, especially if things kind of spiral out of control. Once in a while, I would say this is not the usual. Once in a while, you're against another lawyer or self-rep who are, so a self-rep meaning they don't have a lawyer, or they might have a lawyer who's also kind of crazy, right? Lawyers are like everybody. Not everyone is brilliant, right? Same thing with doctors, same thing with accountants, same thing with bus drivers, right? There are people who are amazing, there are people who are average, and there are probably a few that are not very good at their jobs, and that still exists in law. So that's kind of it in terms of a high level, at least for me right now. I wonder if my answer will change in like 3, 5, 10 years. So maybe I'll have to do a check-in. But in terms of like the good, the bad, the ugly of court, quickly, right? Again, this has been 11 minutes, so I'm not doing like a 30-minute deep dive. But yeah, if you are interested in more of, stories and takes and stuff like that on this topic, please let me know. If you have any specific questions, feel free to put them in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or feel free to respond to the Substack post if you are subscribed on Substack and getting the podcast and the video in that way. If you can thumbs up, make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribed, all that stuff really helps. So thanks again for tuning in. Hope you have a great week, and we will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.